That day, like any other, I was sitting in my usual corner at the coffee shop near the office, nursing a cup of coffee, when a homeless boy approached me. He held out his hand, silently asking for spare change. The boy was thin, his clothes ragged, and his eyes, large and round, carried a deep weariness. Without hesitation, I pulled $10 from my wallet and placed it in his hand. He nodded briefly, muttered a soft, "Thank you," and, as if on instinct, pressed a crumpled scrap of paper into my palm. Before I could ask him anything, he melted into the throng of pedestrians outside. When I unfolded the paper, my heart froze. Written in shaky, uneven letters were the words, "Don't drink that coffee. It could be poisoned." My pulse raced, hammering against my chest. The steaming cup still sat before me, its familiar aroma curling into the air. But from that moment, my life, like a book torn in half, would never be the same. My name is Timothy Crowley. I'm 38, an ordinary office worker in Newport, Rhode Island. My life was simple, unremarkable, a modest home, a steady job, and a loving family. My wife, Kimberly, and our 2 children, Lily and Kevin, were everything to me. Until 4 months ago, when everything shattered. I remember that morning clearly. A crisp autumn day. I kissed Kimberly and the kids goodbye, as I always did. Lily, my 8-year-old, clung to my leg, begging me to buy her candy after work. Kevin, 5, was absorbed in his toy car but looked up to grin when I ruffled his hair. Kimberly stood at the doorway, her soft smile like sunlight spilling into the house, reminding me to bring a jacket because rain might be coming. "You always forget," she teased with a playful laugh. I waved, got in the car, and drove off, completely unaware it would be the last time I'd see them alive. The accident happened around noon on the highway. A truck lost control and slammed head-on into Kimberly's car while she was driving the kids to their afternoon activities. According to the police, there was no chance to avoid it. All 3 were gone in an instant. When the hospital called, I was at the office, reviewing a report. The voice on the other end was cold, delivering the news as if it were mere procedure. I don't remember leaving my desk, stepping outside, or driving to the hospital. All I recall is entering a room and seeing 3 beds, each covered with a white sheet. I collapsed. My screams reverberated in that sterile room, but nothing could bring them back. In the following days, I became a shell of myself. I barely ate or slept, sitting for hours in the living room, staring into the void where Lily's laughter, Kevin's chatter, and Kimberly's soft humming used to fill the air. The house was oppressively silent. I started taking sedatives and seeing a therapist, but nothing dulled the ache. It was like a slow, relentless knife cutting into my chest. The funeral remains a memory I cannot revisit without pain. My in-laws, Vivian and Leonard Blackwood, appeared in impeccable black suits, their expressions icy and unyielding. They had never approved of me. From the moment Kimberly and I fell in love, they made it clear they saw me as unworthy of their daughter, just an average office worker, while Kimberly was the jewel of the Blackwood family, prominent and wealthy in Newport. I had hoped that the tragedy might soften them, at least a little. I was wrong. At the funeral, as I stood before the 3 coffins, tears streaming down my face, Vivian approached me, her voice as cold as marble. "If you had been a better husband and father, maybe this wouldn't have happened." Her words pierced me like a dagger. Leonard stood silently beside her, his contempt unmistakable. Around us, people whispered, some offering comfort, but Vivian's words shredded me anew. I couldn't respond, only bowed my head and let the pain swallow me. After the funeral, I severed nearly all contact with the Blackwoods. I refused to hear more insults or see their faces. I returned to an empty house, attempting to keep living, though each day felt unbearable. Work kept me busy, but it could never fill the emptiness inside. Every corner, every object reminded me of what I had lost. I couldn't bear to open Kimberly's wardrobe, look at Lily's scribbled drawings, or touch Kevin's toy car. The memories cut like knives. Each morning, I clung to my routine, driving to the same small coffee shop near the office, sipping my coffee in silence before the day began. The cafe wasn't anything extraordinary. A few worn wooden tables, the rich scent of freshly brewed coffee, and a young barista who always greeted me with a warm smile. I settled into my usual spot by the window, watching pedestrians pass by, trying to carve out a small slice of peace amidst the storm raging in my chest. But peace, as it turned out, was a fragile illusion. It started with strange, creeping symptoms, subtle at first, like the first drops of a storm. The stomach pains came first. At first, they were fleeting, almost dismissible, like the discomfort from a bad meal. I blamed my erratic eating habits. But gradually, the pain intensified, twisting through me like an unseen hand squeezing relentlessly. Once, in the middle of a meeting, I had to excuse myself, rushing to the bathroom, drenched in sweat, hands trembling uncontrollably. I told myself it was stress, the kind my therapist warned could manifest physically. Then came the sleepless nights. I had already struggled with sleep since the accident, but now rest became a distant luxury. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling as my mind replayed images of Kimberly and the kids. My heart would race unpredictably, pounding as if it might burst through my chest. Sedatives no longer dulled the pain, they merely left me hollow, a shell of exhaustion and despair. My body felt drained, my strength sapped. Headaches throbbed without mercy, each one dragging me deeper into a haze I couldn't escape. I went to the doctor, but the tests showed nothing. Psychological stress, he said, prescribing another medication and advising rest. I nodded, but deep inside unease began to grow. Something was wrong. I felt it, but I didn't dare confront it. I clung to the belief that grief alone was responsible, that my mind and body were simply reacting to what I couldn't bear to accept. About 3 months after the funeral, paperwork arrived from the insurance company. $5 million. Life insurance for Kimberly and the children. When the representative called to inform me, his voice was calm, mechanical, as if reading from a script. I sat on the living room couch, staring at a family photo on the wall, suffocating under the weight of it. The money, immense, unimaginable, brought no comfort. It was a bitter reminder of what I had lost, a cruel echo of a life that would never return. I locked the documents in the safe, unwilling to touch them. To me, that fortune was poison. I told myself I would save it, perhaps for charity, in the way Kimberly would have wanted. She had once dreamed aloud of building a small library in a disadvantaged neighborhood, a haven for children to read and learn. The thought coaxed a fleeting smile onto my face. But the smile vanished the moment the phone rang. Vivian, my mother-in-law. Her voice was syrupy sweet, a chill creeping through me. Timothy, how are you? I've been so worried about you. As if the funeral had never happened. I kept my reply short, careful, but I sensed something off. Then she mentioned the insurance money, subtle as a passing comment. I hear you received quite a payout. Have you considered what to do with it? Families should always help each other. Perhaps you could invest in our company? What do you think? I hesitated, unsure how to respond. I told her I hadn't decided, that I needed time. Yet beneath her polite tone, I sensed urgency, an excitement she could barely conceal. A few days later, Leonard, my father-in-law, called. His voice was deep, commanding. Timothy, you need a clear plan for that money. It belongs to the family, you know. Anger surged through me. The family? They had never considered me part of it. But I remained silent, nodding inwardly, promising only to think about it. After the call, I sank into a chair, hands trembling, trying to make sense of their sudden interest. Their shift from disdain to concern was unsettling, yet I still couldn't bring myself to believe they were capable of more than their verbal cruelty. Meanwhile, my body betrayed me further. The stomach pains worsened, drilling deep into my gut. I once had to leave work early, driving home in agony. Fatigue weighed me down, mornings nearly impossible. Headaches throbbed without pause, dizziness making the world tilt around me. Fear gnawed at the edges of my mind, but I clung to the notion that it was all psychological, a symptom of grief and stress. Yet a small voice whispered, almost imperceptibly, that I was ignoring something far more sinister. Something invisible, creeping, a danger slowly closing in around me. Every morning, I kept my routine, going to the same coffee shop as though it were a lifeline. The bitter black coffee was the only thing keeping me upright, though it no longer offered comfort, only a hollow familiarity. Amanda, the barista, still greeted me with her warm, practiced smile. But lately, I had begun noticing little things I'd never paid attention to before. The way her eyes lingered on me when handing over a cup, or the quiet murmurs of the other staff that fell abruptly silent when I entered. I told myself it was paranoia, that grief had made me suspicious of everyone. Until that day changed everything. I sat in my usual seat by the window, the hot cup in front of me. Outside, Newport glimmered with the crisp chill of autumn, golden leaves drifting along the sidewalk. I tried to focus on a report on my laptop, but my mind was a blank canvas. Stomach pains and pounding headaches made concentration impossible. I sipped the coffee, the familiar bitterness sliding down my throat, but this time, a strange, unfamiliar aftertaste lingered. Then he appeared. The bell above the door jingled. A thin boy, his clothes torn and shoes worn, stepped inside. His hair hung in messy strands, half concealing his face, but his wide, weary eyes betrayed a deeper story, fear, maybe, or a secret too heavy to voice. He moved toward me, small hands outstretched. "Sir, can you spare some change for food?" His voice trembled so softly I had to lean forward to hear him. Something about his eyes froze me. Not just hunger, a deeper, urgent terror. I pulled a $10 bill from my wallet. He murmured, "Thank you, sir," but instead of walking away, he slipped a crumpled piece of paper into my hand. The movement was lightning fast. Before I could react, he bolted, disappearing into the bustling street. I stared at the note, heart hammering. Unfolding it, my blood ran cold. "Don't drink that coffee. It might be poisoned." I scanned the street frantically. The boy was gone. The coffee before me, once ordinary, now seemed menacing. Steam rose in the autumn air, the aroma now carrying a silent threat. I pushed the cup aside, hands shaking, mind racing. Was it a joke? A prank by a desperate child? But the fear in his eyes, the urgency in his voice, how could I dismiss it? Then I saw a figure at the street corner, a man holding a phone as if snapping pictures of me. When our eyes met, he pulled his hood over his head and vanished into the crowd. I didn't touch the coffee again. I tucked the note into my coat pocket and left the shop, scanning the street for the boy, but he had vanished without a trace. The bustling city felt empty, every step echoing isolation. His warning stirred something I had tried to bury. My symptoms, stomach pains, insomnia, exhaustion, were no longer just stress. They were signals of something far more dangerous. Driving home, I couldn't stop thinking about the note. The coffee might be poisoned. The words cut through me like ice. I had been drinking there for weeks, maybe months. If it was true, the danger had been slowly seeping into me all this time. My stomach churned, whether from fear or some unseen toxin, I couldn't tell. I pulled over, trying to steady my breath, but thoughts of Vivian and Leonard crowded my mind. Their intrusive phone calls, fake concern, obsessive focus on the insurance money. Could they be involved? No. I shook the thought away. They were Kimberly's parents. Cruel, yes, but this? Could they really? At home, I locked the door, drew the curtains, and sat on the couch, the note pressed in my hand. I read it over and over. Don't drink that coffee. It might be poisoned. I thought of my symptoms, stabbing stomach pains, relentless fatigue, the throbbing headaches. The doctor had dismissed it as stress. But what if the boy was right? What if someone was trying to poison me? Panic tightened around my chest. I opened the safe, pulling out the insurance papers. $5 million. Money I had never imagined touching, now suddenly a dangerous beacon. To the Blackwoods, that money was everything. I remembered Vivian's sweet but chilling tone, Leonard's cold, contemptuous glare at the funeral. They had never accepted me as family. To them, I was an obstacle, someone standing between them and the inheritance. The thought that they might somehow be connected to the boy's warning made my skin crawl. I knew I had to find him. He was the key, the only link to understanding what was happening. But how do you track a homeless child in a city as large as Newport? All I had was the coffee shop and nothing else. I grabbed my phone and called my father, Gary Crowley, the only person I trusted. Retired military, a special agent, a man with a quiet toughness and an unshakable sense of control. We kept regular contact, even though he lived alone in the suburbs. I told him about the note and the boy, keeping my suspicions about the Blackwoods to myself. I only said I needed him to investigate discreetly. Suspicious of what, Timothy? His voice was calm, steady. I don't know, I admitted. Something's wrong. I need your help to look into it, quietly. He didn't ask questions. Just said, send me everything you have. And be careful. I knew he was worried, but he didn't need to say it. Actions, not words, were his way of showing concern. That night, sleep refused me. I lay in bed, mind racing with questions that had no answers. The boy's note rested on the nightstand, a silent, accusing reminder that I was no longer safe. I thought of Kimberly, her gentle smile, and wondered if she would forgive me for doubting her parents. But then the memory of their cruel words at the funeral returned, their faces cold and calculating. Their sudden interest in the insurance money now seemed sinister. The boy's warning, don't drink that coffee. It might be poisoned, cut through my thoughts like a knife. I could no longer ignore the possibility that danger was real. I had to act. I had to find out the truth before it was too late. Morning came, and I woke exhausted, dark circles framing my eyes. My body ached with fatigue, and the persistent stomach pains reminded me that something was silently attacking me from within. The note lay on the table, its trembling, handwritten words screaming in my mind. I couldn't sit idle any longer. If someone was truly trying to poison me, the coffee I drank every day at the shop was the clearest lead. I resolved to go back, not to drink, but to collect a sample and uncover the truth. Before leaving, I rummaged through my desk for something to discreetly hold the coffee. I found an old ballpoint pen, the cheap kind I used for notes. I took it apart, washed the empty casing thoroughly with hot water, and dried it carefully. Small, unnoticeable, perfect for slipping a bit of coffee inside. I tucked the pen into my coat pocket, along with the boy's note, like a protective charm. I knew I was stepping into danger, but I had no other choice. On the way to the coffee shop, I called my father, Gary Crowley. I told him about the note, the boy's warning, and the strange symptoms that had plagued me for weeks. I tried to keep my voice steady, but I could feel my anxiety seeping through every word. I need you to help me check something, I admitted, my voice trembling slightly. I'm going to take a sample from the coffee at the shop. Can it be tested? Quietly, discreetly. There was a pause on the other end, and then his low, measured voice answered. Bring the sample to me. I know someone who can handle it. But Timothy, be careful. If what that boy said is true, you're dealing with someone who won't hesitate to finish what they started. I nodded, even though he couldn't see me, taking small comfort in knowing my father had my back. Entering the shop, I forced myself to appear normal. Amanda smiled at me as usual. Same as always, Timothy? She asked, already grinding the beans for my black coffee. I nodded, a tight smile on my face, but inside I felt like I was walking on a knife's edge. I watched her every move, grinding, pouring hot water, sliding the cup in front of me. Everything appeared routine, but the boy's warning made it impossible to trust anyone. I settled into my usual corner by the window, the steaming coffee in front of me. Glancing around to ensure no one was watching, I pulled the pen from my pocket. Carefully, I poured a small amount of coffee into the casing, just enough for testing. I screwed the pen back together, slipped it into my pocket, and stood, leaving the cup mostly untouched. Amanda raised an eyebrow, but I waved as if hurrying to an urgent matter. Driving to my father's house, my heart raced. The pen felt heavy in my pocket, carrying both my hope and my fear. Part of me clung to the thought that it was all a misunderstanding, that the boy was wrong, that my symptoms were just stress. But another, colder part whispered that I might be on the verge of a horrifying truth. My father greeted me at the door, his eyes sharp and assessing. "You look terrible," he said bluntly. I gave a weak smile and handed him the pen. "Here's the coffee sample. Can you have it tested? I need to know for certain." He examined it like it was critical evidence in a high-stakes case. "I'll contact an old friend at a lab. They work discreetly. No traces. But Timothy, if there's something in this, you need to brace yourself." I nodded, though inside I felt far from ready for what was coming. For the next 3 days, I barely left the house. I stopped drinking coffee entirely, sticking only to water and the meals I prepared myself. The stomach pains persisted, though slightly less intense, as if my body was trying to purge something hidden. I didn't dare call my father to ask about the results, afraid I couldn't handle the truth. Each night, I lay in bed, staring at the boy's note, thinking of Kimberly, Lily, and Kevin. Was the $5 million insurance payout the motive behind all this? And if so, who was behind it? Vivian and Leonard Blackwood, my late wife's parents, were the only names that came to mind. Yet I resisted believing they could be capable of such cruelty. On the afternoon of the 3rd day, my father summoned me to his house. When I arrived, he was sitting at the dining table, a single sheet of paper before him. His expression was grim, but there was a sharp, rare anger burning in his eyes. "Sit down, Timothy," he said, his voice low enough to send chills down my spine. I obeyed, feeling the air in the room grow heavy. "These are the test results," he said, sliding the paper toward me. "Your coffee, it contains thallium. Colorless, odorless, tasteless. The dose is small, but enough to gradually weaken you. Continued exposure would eventually be fatal." My blood ran cold. Thallium. The word echoed in my mind like the toll of a death knell. I searched my father's face, hoping against hope this was some terrible mistake, but his eyes offered no reassurance, only stark certainty. "Someone is trying to kill you, Timothy," he said, his voice almost a whisper. "They don't want it to look like murder. They want it to seem natural, to slowly wear you down. This was planned." I gripped the paper, my hands trembling violently. The stomach pains, the fatigue, the headaches, all suddenly made sense. Someone had been poisoning me, day after day, hiding the danger in something I drank without suspicion. My thoughts raced to the coffee shop, to Amanda, the other staff, and the shadowy figure I'd glimpsed at the corner. But most of all, I thought of Vivian and Leonard, their feigned concern, their persistent calls about the insurance money, their contemptuous stares at the funeral. Pieces of a horrifying puzzle were finally clicking into place. "What do I do now, Dad?" I asked, my voice cracking under the weight of fear. He stood and placed a hand on my shoulder, a rare gesture he reserved only for the most serious moments. "We'll find out who's behind this," he said firmly. "But from now on, you don't eat or drink anything you haven't prepared yourself. And you must keep this quiet. If they know you suspect, they'll change tactics, and we'll lose our trail." I nodded, though it felt as though I were sinking into a dark abyss. My thoughts returned to the homeless boy who had given me the warning. I didn't know his name, but I owed him my life. I had to find him, not just to thank him, but to understand what he knew. More than that, I had to confront the possibility that the people trying to kill me were the ones closest to my family, the ones Kimberly had once loved. Leaving my father's house with the test results clutched in my hand, I felt like I was carrying a ticking time bomb. I was no longer Timothy Crowley, ordinary office worker. I was a man being hunted, and I had to survive. The next morning, I returned to the block near the coffee shop where I had first met the boy. I didn't enter the shop, too wary of being watched. I parked a few meters away on a side street and observed from a distance. The crowd moved busily, but he was nowhere in sight. I waited for hours, eyes scanning every face, searching every small figure among the throng. Every time a child in tattered clothing passed by, my heart leapt, only to sink again in disappointment when it wasn't him. Just as noon approached, I saw him. The boy stood at a corner near a trash bin, rummaging through discarded items. His messy hair hid half his face, but those large, tired eyes were unmistakable. I stepped cautiously from the car, trying to approach without alarming him. But the moment he saw me, panic flared in his eyes and he bolted. "Wait!" I called out, raising my voice just enough for him to hear. "I'm the man from the other day. I just want to talk." He froze, keeping his distance, eyes wide and wary. "I don't want trouble," he whispered, voice shaking. I raised my hands in a gesture of peace. "I know. I'm grateful for the note. You saved me. But I need to know more. What did you hear? How did you know the coffee was poisoned?" He glanced around nervously, as though someone were watching. Then he cautiously stepped closer, lowering his voice. "My name's Mark," he said. "I hang around the coffee shop a lot, begging for food. One day I was sitting near the back door, in the alley." I listened, my chest tightening as Mark explained. "I overheard a man talking to one of the workers inside. They were discussing putting something in the coffee of a man who comes every day. They described him. It sounded like you. I didn't know who they were, but I got scared. I thought you should know." A chill ran through me. "It sounded like me? How?" I asked, my voice faltering. Mark hesitated before replying. "They said it was a man, around 40, brown hair, wearing a suit, always sitting by the window. I saw you and thought it matched, so I wrote the note." I clenched my fists, trying to quell the surge of anger that burned through me. Someone had been watching me, tracking my habits, noting where I sat and what I drank. This wasn't random. It was meticulous, calculated, and deadly. I thanked Mark and handed him some money and a sandwich I had brought. "I'll find you again, okay? If you hear anything else, tell me." Mark nodded, still wary but showing a glimmer of trust. Before he turned to leave, I asked, "Where do you live, Mark?" He shook his head, voice soft. "I don't have a home, but I'm okay." His words twisted my heart. I thought of Lily and Kevin, surrounded by love every day, and of Mark, a homeless boy who risked himself to save me. I promised myself that if I survived this, I would repay his courage somehow. As he walked away, I stood in the bustling crowd, the weight of the situation pressing down on me. I knew I had to move quickly, but carefully. I called my father. "I need your help. We have to watch the coffee shop, find out who the worker Mark mentioned is." "Take me there," my father said without hesitation. "We'll observe from a distance. If someone inside is involved, we'll find them." The next day, we parked across the street in a rental car to avoid being recognized. My father pulled out a small pair of binoculars, a relic from his special agent days. "Point out the regulars," he said, calm but sharp. I scanned the shop. Amanda, the barista, and a few others I usually see. But there's also a young guy with messy hair who hangs around the secondary counter. He doesn't interact much. I don't know his name. Through the binoculars, my father observed the young man scribbling in a small notebook. "He looks nervous," my father noted. "See how he glances at the door every time someone enters? Something's off." We watched all day. By late afternoon, we saw a man in a black coat and baseball cap slip into the alley behind the shop. The messy-haired worker appeared, received an envelope, and disappeared inside. My father snapped a few photos, though the light was dim and the man's face unclear. "We have a lead," my father said, eyes narrowed. "But it's not enough. We need that worker to talk." A chill ran down my spine. This wasn't suspicion anymore. Someone was paying to poison me, and that worker was part of the plan. Later, when the messy-haired worker, whose name tag read Jake, stepped into the alley to take out the trash, my father approached, voice low and commanding. "Jake, we need to talk," he said, his piercing gaze making the man flinch. "I know what you're doing with the coffee, and I know who's paying you. Jake went pale. I don't know what you mean, he stammered. My father didn't let him off. Stepping closer, voice menacing, he said, You have two choices. 1. Tell me who's paying you. 2. I hand you over to the police and they'll make you talk. Choose. Jake's eyes darted around, seeking escape. But my father blocked him, and I stood behind, heart pounding. Finally, Jake broke. I don't know his name, he whispered. A man, about 50, paid me $2,000 each time to put something in a guy's coffee. He said it was just to make him tired, not dangerous. I swear I didn't know it was poison. Rage surged through me. My father signaled for Jake to stay quiet. Keep working like nothing happened. Got it? If you tip anyone off, you'll regret it. Jake nodded frantically, terrified. As we left the alley, my father pulled me aside. We've got the worker, but he's just a pawn. The mastermind is the man handing over the envelopes. And Timothy. I suspect the Blackwoods are involved. Their obsession with the insurance money, their behavior at the funeral, it all fits. I nodded, though I didn't want to believe it. Vivian and Leonard, Kimberly's parents, were the only ones with a clear motive. Then my father said something that sent ice down my spine. A few days ago, I did some preliminary digging on the Blackwoods through old contacts. They're tied to a shady organization that helps clients seize assets through poisonings and assassinations. They take a cut of the profits after each job. Timothy, you might be their next target. I stood there in the cold alley, the world collapsing around me. The Blackwoods, the people I once considered family, might be orchestrating a plan to kill me. Now I had to find a way to expose them before they devised another scheme, one that could end my life and claim the $5 million insurance payout. Driving home, I tried to piece together the fragments swirling in my mind. Everything was terrifyingly clear. Vivian and Leonard's contempt from the moment I fell in love with Kimberly, their cruel remarks at the funeral, and a sudden shift in their behavior when they learned about the insurance money. They didn't care about their daughter or grandchildren. They were fixated on wealth. And now, with thallium in my coffee and Jake the barista's confession, I could no longer pretend they were innocent. But to bring them down, I needed concrete evidence, something undeniable that would expose them and hold them accountable. The next day, I called my father. I need stronger proof, I said. I can't just point fingers. If they're really part of an organization like you said, they won't leave openings for me to catch them. There was a pause on the line, as if he were weighing his words. Then his voice came, calm and resolute. You're right. The test results and the barista's partial confession aren't enough. We need ironclad evidence. I have a plan to make your in-laws expose themselves. They think you're weakening, that the poison is taking you down. Use that. Pretend you're gravely ill. They'll let their guard down, and that's when we catch them. His idea lit a spark in the darkness. If Vivian and Leonard believed I was dying, they would reveal their true selves. I thought of Kimberly, how she always trusted her parents despite their poor treatment of me, and I wondered if she would forgive me for suspecting them. But no. Emotions couldn't override reason. This was for me, for Lily and Kevin, and for Kimberly. I'll fake being sick, I told my father. But I need your help. If they come to the house, I want to record everything, every word, every move. I know how to do it, he said. You'll need hidden cameras and a recorder. I'll bring the equipment, but Timothy, you must play the part convincingly. If they suspect anything, it all falls apart. The next day, my father arrived with a small black bag. Inside were 2 tiny cameras, no larger than coins, and a recorder capable of capturing sound from across the room. He showed me how to place them, one hidden in a bookshelf crevice facing the sofa, the other inside a table lamp aimed at the front door. The recorder tucked discreetly under the table would pick up every sound. They'll capture everything, he said. But don't let them touch a thing. After he left, I began rehearsing my role. I stopped going out, called my boss claiming I was seriously ill, and kept the curtains drawn so the house was dim, as if I had no energy to face the world. I lay on the sofa in worn pajamas, hair messy, face deliberately gaunt. Every movement was slow, as if the poison were eating me from the inside. But inside, I was sharper than ever. I was setting a trap, and Vivian and Leonard were the prey. 2 days later, just as I expected, Vivian called. Her sweet voice sent a chill down my spine. "Timothy, are you okay? I heard you're sick. I'm so worried." I faked a weak cough. "Mom, I'm not doing well. Exhausted, aching, can't go to work. I just need to rest." Her pause was loaded with feigned concern. "Oh, you poor thing. Dad and I will come by. We're family. You need someone by your side." I caught the thin layer of glee hiding behind her words. They believed the poison was working, that I was wasting away. "Thank you, Mom," I whispered, voice trembling. "I'll stay home." When I hung up, I gripped the phone tightly. They had taken the bait. But a pang of guilt pierced me. Kimberly had loved them, and now I was about to unmask their true nature. I could only hope that, wherever she was, she would understand. The next day, I prepared meticulously. On the sofa, a thin blanket draped over me, pale makeup applied to my face to enhance the illusion of sickness. Empty pill bottles scattered across the table, a feigned dependence on painkillers. Glasses of water left around the room, as if I lacked the strength to tidy up. Every detail calculated. The cameras and recorder were in place. I texted my father. "They're coming. I'll be nearby," he replied. "If anything goes wrong, call. I'll bring the police immediately." When the doorbell rang, I drew a deep breath and shuffled to the door, leaning against the frame as if my body could barely support me. Vivian and Leonard appeared, impeccably dressed. Vivian's smile was pitying, but her eyes gleamed with satisfaction. Leonard remained cold and silent, nodding only as I invited them inside. "Oh, Timothy, you look dreadful," Vivian said, her voice syrupy with false concern. She placed a hand on my shoulder, but it felt like ice. "You need rest. I'll make you a cup of tea." I nodded weakly, letting her guide me back to the sofa. Leonard sat across from me, eyes scanning the room, assessing, calculating. Vivian moved to the kitchen, rummaging through cabinets. I knew she wasn't just looking for tea. The camera on the bookshelf recorded everything. The recorder under the table captured every word. I faked a cough, a soft groan, but my gaze never left them. Leonard spoke, voice low and deliberate. "Timothy, have you thought about the insurance money yet? That money shouldn't go to waste. We could help you manage it." I closed my eyes, pretending to be utterly exhausted, though my heart raced like a drum. "I haven't thought about it," I whispered, my voice weak. "I just need to get better first." Leonard nodded, but I caught the faint twitch at the corner of his mouth, a silent acknowledgement of his satisfaction with my feigned condition. Vivian returned with a steaming cup of tea, setting it carefully on the table. "Drink this, dear," she cooed, her tone so syrupy it sent chills down my spine. "It'll make you feel better." I studied the tea, fully aware it was likely tainted, but I nodded and lifted the cup, pretending to sip before setting it back down. "I'm too tired," I murmured. Vivian exchanged a quick, meaningful glance with Leonard. They believed I hadn't noticed, but I had. They were smug, convinced their plan was close to fruition. They had no idea I was ready to turn the tables. My small living room had become a stage, and I was the lead actor in a play of my own making. The cameras hidden in the bookshelf and table lamp, the recorder tucked beneath the table. They were all live, capturing every motion, every word. All I needed to do was stay calm, bide my time, and let them reveal themselves. Vivian settled on the sofa a short distance away, her eyes scanning me as though I were prey. "Timothy, you really don't look well," she said, her voice dripping with false concern. "You need a doctor. Should I call someone to take care of you?" I coughed weakly, tilting my head as though I could barely hold it upright. "No need, Mom," I whispered. "I just need rest." Leonard, seated across the room, never once took his gaze off me. I could feel the icy calculation in his eyes, as if he were waiting for me to collapse entirely. That moment had arrived. I needed to make them overconfident, to believe I was utterly defenseless. I inhaled deeply and then suddenly clutched my stomach, groaning in pain. "Oh God!" I moaned, my voice faltering as my body slumped onto the sofa. My hands gripped my abdomen as if enduring unimaginable agony. Vivian jumped up, alarm lacing her sweet tone. "Timothy! What's wrong? Do we need to call a doctor?" But beneath her panic, I caught it, a subtle glimmer of satisfaction. I remained silent, continuing to groan, then collapsed to the floor, feigning unconsciousness. Head tilted, eyes tightly shut, body completely still. I heard Vivian's footsteps draw near, then her whispered words to Leonard. "He's almost done for, Leonard. Faster than we expected. We need to find the insurance documents. They have to be here somewhere." My heart pounded, but I lay still, slowing my breathing to mimic the ebb of life. I could hear them rummaging through the room, shifting pill bottles, opening drawers, flipping papers. They no longer bothered hiding their urgency. "Where does he keep it?" Leonard muttered, frustration bleeding through his voice. "I told you, Vivian, we should have acted faster. If he dies before signing the authorization, it'll take forever to claim that money legally." Vivian replied, cold and precise. "Don't worry. He's not dead yet, but he's had enough to ensure he won't last the week. Just find the documents. When he wakes, we'll make him sign. Everything's on track." I lay motionless, a fire of rage burning inside me. They were discussing my death as if it were a business deal, a calculated transaction. They didn't just want me gone, they wanted the insurance money meant for Kimberly, Lily, and Kevin, the family they once claimed to love. I longed to leap up and scream, but patience was my weapon. Everything was being recorded. This was the evidence I needed. Vivian continued rifling through the room, her footsteps sharp on the wooden floor. "He's weakening so fast," she said, a twinge of glee threading through her voice. "I told you this plan was perfect. No one suspects death from exhaustion." Leonard chuckled, a cold, hollow sound that made my spine shiver. "Thallium was the perfect choice," he said. "No trace, no suspicion. Once he's gone, the $5 million is ours." I knew the moment had come. While they were distracted searching, I discreetly pulled my phone from my pocket and sent a quick message to my father, "Come now." Sliding the phone back into my pocket, I continued to feign unconsciousness, my heart hammering in my chest. I heard Vivian open the safe in the bedroom, where I had deliberately left a copy of the insurance documents. "Found it!" she exclaimed, her voice thick with excitement. "Leonard, it's here. He was foolish enough to leave it where we could find it," Vivian said. They returned to the living room, and I could hear the rustle of papers being flipped open. "We need him to sign the authorization before he dies," Leonard muttered. "Otherwise, it'll take forever to claim the money from the insurance company." Vivian scoffed. "Don't worry. If he doesn't sign, we have ways. The organization has people who can forge signatures, but it's better if he does it himself." I lay there, forcing my breathing to sound shallow, every muscle tensed. The cameras and recorder had captured everything, their words, their plans, the confession that they had been poisoning me. All that remained was for my father and the police to arrive in time to turn the tables. Moments later, the distant wail of police sirens pierced the quiet neighborhood, growing louder by the second. Vivian froze, her voice tight. "Why are the police here? Who called them?" Before she could react further, the front door burst open. Gary Crowley stepped inside, calm and commanding. Leonard froze, shock written across his face. "Gary! What are you doing here?" Heavy footsteps followed, officers rushing into the house. I'd opened my eyes, sat upright, my body no longer pretending to be frail, and stepped forward to face Vivian and Leonard. Vivian trembled, her eyes wide. Leonard remained pale and rigid, disbelief etched into every line of his face. "Timothy, you weren't unconscious?" Vivian stammered. I smiled, a cold, furious smile. I was never unconscious, Vivian. I knew everything, the thallium, your plan, and the organization behind you. I walked to the bookshelf, retrieving the hidden camera, then pulled the recorder from beneath the table. Everything you've said, every move you've made, has been recorded, I said, my voice calm but cutting. I played the recorder. Vivian's voice filled the room. Thallium will do its job. He's had enough to ensure he won't last the week. Leonard tried to step back, but the officers blocked his path. Vivian panicked. You dared to set us up, she hissed. Who do you think you are? Leonard demanded. I'm Kimberly's husband, I replied, my voice trembling with restrained emotion. I'm Lily and Kevin's father, and I will not let you steal the last thing they left me. I pointed to the tea on the table. That tea, I'm certain it contains thallium. Officers, please have it tested. One of the officers nodded, carefully bagging the tea as evidence. Vivian and Leonard were escorted to the police car, their faces a mix of panic and rage. You'll regret this, Timothy, Leonard bellowed. I met his glare calmly. The only ones who will regret anything are you, for betraying Kimberly, for betraying the kids, for betraying my trust. The police drove them away, and I finally exhaled, the weight of months of terror lifting from my chest. My father placed a hand on my shoulder, pride in his eyes, though worry still lingered. You did well, Timothy, he said quietly. But remember, the organization is still out there. I nodded. The fight wasn't over. But for now, I had reclaimed justice for Kimberly, Lily, and Kevin. The following weeks were a whirlwind of investigations. The police tested the tea Vivian had prepared. The results were chilling but unsurprising. Thallium in doses lethal to a healthy adult within days. Combined with the recordings and camera footage, the evidence against Vivian and Leonard was overwhelming. They were detained immediately, awaiting trial. Yet the shadowy organization behind them remained a threat, a network skilled in poisonings and asset seizures. My father, leveraging old contacts from his days as a special agent, began feeding information to federal investigators. Dismantling the group would not be easy, but we had a starting point. The trial arrived on a cold morning in Newport. My heart pounded, not with fear, but with the knowledge that I could finally confront those who had betrayed my family. Vivian and Leonard sat at the defendant's dock, stripped of their usual arrogance. Vivian's silver hair, once meticulously styled, now looked disheveled. Her eyes avoided mine. Leonard, always calculating, kept his head bowed, as if attempting to hide his shame. I felt no pity. They had chosen this path, and now they would face the consequences. The prosecutor presented the evidence with precision. The audio recording played through the courtroom, Vivian's voice chillingly clear. Thallium will do its job. He's had enough to ensure he won't last the week. Leonard's whispered plans to seize the insurance money stunned the room. The video footage from the hidden cameras, showing them rifling through my house for the documents, left the jury speechless. I sat in the front row, hands clenched, struggling to contain the fury boiling inside me. They had spoken of Kimberly and the kids as if they were mere pawns in a business transaction. Their lawyer attempted to argue that the couple acted under pressure from the organization, that they did not directly poison me. The prosecutor countered ruthlessly, showing that they orchestrated the plan, hired someone to carry it out, and stood to profit from the insurance payout. Finally, the test results from the tea sealed their fate, irrefutable proof of their intent to kill. After 3 days of deliberation, the jury finally returned their verdict. Vivian and Leonard were sentenced to life imprisonment for conspiracy to commit murder and involvement with a criminal organization. The relief I felt, however, came not just from their sentences, but from the information Vivian had provided under pressure. She had revealed critical details about the shadowy network behind them, a clandestine organization that supplied poisons, orchestrated assassinations, and facilitated asset seizures. Based on her testimony, federal investigators launched a large-scale operation. While the organization wasn't completely dismantled, several key members were arrested, severely weakening its network. My father, wearing a rare smile, turned to me and said, "We've dealt them a heavy blow, Timothy. But stay vigilant. People like that don't quit easily." I nodded, fully aware that he was right. Returning home after the trial, the house no longer felt like a place of grief. I cleaned every corner, arranging photos of Kimberly, Lily, and Kevin on the shelves. I could finally look at them without wincing. Kimberly's smile, Lily's mischievous eyes, and Kevin's warm hugs became a source of strength rather than a reminder of loss. I decided to honor Kimberly's dream, using part of the insurance money to build a small library for children in a disadvantaged neighborhood, a place where kids could read, learn, and discover hope. I named it the Kimberly Library. On the opening day, watching the children cheer and explore the bookshelves, I felt as though Kimberly herself was smiling down at me. Yet the light that truly renewed my life was Mark, the homeless boy who had warned me. After the trial, I returned to the area near the coffee shop and found him huddled in an alley. When he saw me, those large, weary eyes now sparkled with cautious hope. "Mr. Timothy?" he asked, surprised. I sat beside him, told him everything that had happened, and thanked him for risking himself to save me. "I had nothing to lose," he said simply, but the warmth in his smile tugged at my heart. I offered to adopt him. At first, he refused, fearing he would be a burden, but I was patient. I brought him to my home, gave him a room, and slowly, he began to trust me. I completed the legal process to become his guardian. For the first time in months, I felt a family again. Mark didn't replace Lily or Kevin, but he brought a new light, a reason to live. I returned to work with a renewed purpose. I was no longer simply an office worker going through the motions. I dedicated myself to charity, helping homeless children like Mark, and collaborated with my father to provide intelligence to the authorities about the criminal organization. My life was no longer empty. It still carried the scars of grief and betrayal, but I had learned to turn them into motivation. Looking back, I realized that life can be cruel, but it also teaches us how to rise from the ashes. I lost Kimberly, Lily, and Kevin in an accident I couldn't prevent. I was betrayed by people I once trusted, and I nearly lost my life to their greed. Yet even in the darkest times, small rays of light can shine through. Mark was that light. My father, with his unwavering guidance and resilience, was my anchor. And I, armed with determination, found meaning again. The greatest lesson I learned is this: never stop believing in yourself, even when the world turns its back on you. Trust your instincts in moments of danger. If I had ignored Mark's warning, if I had ignored my own gut, I might not be here to tell this story. To anyone reading this, cherish the people you love, they can be taken from you in an instant. Be cautious of those around you, for not everyone's intentions are pure. And above all, fight for the truth, no matter how painful it may be. I do not know what the future holds. The criminal organization still exists, and one day, they may come for me. But I am no longer afraid. I have Mark, my father, and the memories of Kimberly, Lily, and Kevin to give me strength. I have walked through darkness, and I will continue forward, carrying the light they left behind in my heart.